So the first thing that I want you to think about when it comes to making this plan is the question, what do my students need to know? That's the question that I want you to ask yourself first. Now we're thinking in the context of, to make this manageable, let's say 1 week at a time. So maybe we're thinking the week after spring break. What is it that my students need to know at the end of that week? I use the analogy of thinking of going on a journey, the importance of knowing this information before we get started. Because imagine, if you will, that if you got into your car and you didn't know what your destination was before you started off on the road, you could end up in Waimea, you could end up in South Point. If you don't have the destination in mind, you're just going to end up somewhere, and at the end of the day, it may not be the place that you actually wanted or needed to be. So knowing the destination, in this case, knowing what your students need to know before we start making any further plans is extremely important. When you work with an instructional designer, one of the things that we would do is walk you through Bloom's taxonomy of all the different levels of learning and the cognitive levels of learning. We're not going to do that today. There's only 2 types of learning that I want you to think about when we're coming up with this plan, and that is, what do my students need to know, or what do my students need to be able to do? If you're teaching a class on CPR, if you're thinking about the things that your students may need to know, that may be something like knowing the steps of performing CPR. Perhaps they're needing to know why compressions are important, why breaths are important. They know the body systems that are at play when CPR is taking place, things along those lines. You can put all those into the category of things your students need to know. The other category we're going to focus on is things your students need to be able to do. In that same CPR class, it's very different for them to just know the steps of CPR and then to actually perform CPR on a dummy, for example, or a mannequin. For the week of March 23rd, this next week coming up, think about what your students need to know or be able to do at the end of that week. So go ahead and take a few minutes,